Hello again from the Johnson firm right here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My name is Jonathan Johnson. This is my brother Adam Johnson. We're two of the partners here at the firm. Today we're going to talk about a topic that really affects everyone. You might think, oh, it only affects me if I was arrested, but no, it's going to affect everyone because it protects society as a whole from government overreach and different things like that. And it is your rights under Miranda, your Miranda warning, your interactions with the police, what you have to submit to, what you don't have to submit to, and how you can protect yourself in situations where either A, you've been suspected of a crime, or just in maybe even innocent interactions with the police that could have unintended consequences.
Right. So to start, I think the most important thing we can point out is that in Louisiana, in our Constitution, Article 1, subsection 13, we have, everybody knows Miranda warnings, right?
They know it from Law and Order.
That's right.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. We see it in every cop show we've ever seen.
That's exactly right. Well, in Louisiana, you have the right to those same rights, right? But Miranda, you have the right to them starting from detainment. And so there's three different types of sort of custody. There's not being in custody at all, right? There is a traffic stop, which is referred to as a Terry stop and a sort of a temporary seizure. Then there's detainment, and then there's formal arrest sort of in custody, right? And detainment is less than, the cuffs being put on you and you're in the back of the unit, right? By then, you've likely already gotten your Miranda warnings, although it seems like many police officers we're starting to see a lot of them forget, unfortunately. But short of that, when you're just detained in the state of Louisiana, our state, under Louisiana Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 218.1, and our Constitution, give you added protection. It gives us it gives you the right to those Miranda warnings as soon as you've been detained, and regardless of whether or not you're being interrogated. Miranda applies when a person is in custody, which is more synonymous with arrest, and when they're being interrogated, meaning asking questions that could lead to an incriminating statement. In Louisiana, we liked Miranda so much that right afterwards, we put in place Article 218.1, which gives people, citizens, the right to those same warnings, all right, as soon as you're detained, which is not just, it's not detained and being questioned, but just detained. Right. So that's a really important right.
And I think it's important for people to understand that we interact with police in lots of different situations, right? We see them at parades. We tell them hello, whatever. But the police don't have the right, just in general, to walk up to you and stop you and keep you from going on about your business.
Yeah.
There are certain things that they have to have either documented or that they've had to have witnessed in order to stop you from just exercising your freedom to just move about, go on down the road. So what you're talking about on this detainment aspect is, hey, they've got your attention and they're keeping you here. And if you turn around and ignore them and take off running the other way, then now they're chasing you.
Yeah, right.
Like this is, I'm no longer free to kind of go.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm not in their custody.
Right.
And our law under Louisiana has said, hey, even in that scenario where they haven't really determined whether you did anything wrong yet or not,
right,
but they're stopping you from leaving, they have to honor certain protections.
And the important part about that is that generally speaking, if a police officer tells you you've been detained, I will say this, that in the cases that I've reviewed, it is extremely common that you're in fact going to be arrested.
Right.
And we've cross-examined a number of police officers, and it seems as if this is not genuinely being taught.
It's not understood.
It's not understood that they have to give people their rights as soon as they're detained. Because let me tell you something, the quicker you give someone your rights, we've certainly built up a certain complacency to exercising your rights. But as soon as you tell someone they have right to an attorney, that they have the right to remain silent, they know then that they're probably not talking themselves out of an arrest, right? And so in situations where you're not sure.
Well, if there was any confusion as to, well, you think I did something wrong, or am I being
clarified?
As soon as somebody gives you that warning,
that's right.
Most people, and if you're not some of these most people, you need to start being some of these most people.
Right.
If a police officer comes up to you and reads you your rights, warning bells should go off that, hey, I might be in some trouble.
Right. And the fear is, the most common example that I sort of deal with is, the person gets a call and we're not talking about a traffic stop situation. We're talking about a situation where someone's going in and made a complaint. They don't know that the complaint's been made. They don't have any reason to believe it would come, it would get to that point, but whatever. Someone comes in and makes a complaint, and then my prospective client gets a call, all right, from a detective that says, hey, your name came up in an investigation. They don't pick up the phone and say, hey, you're a suspect in an ongoing investigation, because if you use the term like suspect, right, then they might call one of the 24,000 lawyers or the friends of some 24,000 lawyers, all right, the state of Louisiana, that might say, hey, man, you don't need to go down there and talk to the police, all right, without an attorney. So there is also this innate fear, and it's what Miranda versus Arizona referred to as inherently coercive, meaning just involvement with the police can sometimes be inherently coercive. They ain't got to put a gun in your head. No. They ain't got to threaten you. Just being in uniform, you're expected to cooperate, like basically in your gut.
Just ask yourself what you feel when a police officer is walking up to your window when you've been pulled over.
That's exactly right.
You have a heightened level of anxiety. There's a nervousness there, and if he walks up and says, "Hey, where you been tonight?" You feel compelled to answer that question.
Well, I mean, some of us get used to it. I'm just kidding.
You don't have to answer that question, but you're going to feel, you're just going to, I was at dinner, you're going to spit some answer out because
that's right.
You're
well, the fear is, well, man, like, you think I should hire you, and you should contact the police and tell them I'm not going to go down there and give a statement. Well, isn't that going to increase the chances of me being arrested? Look, that is a perfectly relevant fear to have that everybody has in that same circumstance. What I can tell you is this, that police officer has been trained that he cannot use your assertion of rights against you. And when he's doing an affidavit of probable cause, for instance, where he has to put facts in there justifying a person of ordinary belief that it's more likely than not that you committed a crime, he can't put in there that whenever I contacted him, he lawyered up, or that would be the most unprofessional, like, me and his boss would be having a conversation, and he would probably be receiving some form of discipline as a result of that, right? So it doesn't give them more information. It doesn't increase the chances of you being arrested. But I will say this. Let's say, hypothetically, we're talking about with a police officer who's clearly not well trained, and two, not been on the force for very long, right? If he decides to arrest you as a result of you not talking to him, do you honestly think that you were going to talk yourself out of an arrest with a nut job like that? Like, once he got you on video in a room and being questioned?
I don't even think it has to be the that example. I think in what we've seen in the vast majority of those situations, an arrest decision's already made.
They
are trying to get you to come in.
They're just trying to take advantage of the element of surprise.
To give more information than they already have.
Yeah, I've had clients literally say, like, go down there, cooperate, and then we find out afterwards, this happens all the time, they had the arrest warrant already in their possession at the time that you were being questioned. They definitely planned on arresting you. And what people don't realize is that the reason Miranda is so important, and Louisiana law, especially for our system, is so important, is because it protects you from incriminating yourself. What people think all the time is that, man, if I'm innocent, I ain't got nothing to hide. You can, if you're falsely accused of, say, doing something that otherwise would be a he said, she said type case, right? You get accused, unfortunately, by some young male or female or a person of assaulting them. And there's no evidence other than what they're saying against you. Well, if the police believe that person, and you were near that person, let's say on the night in question, but what they say happened didn't happen. If you go down there and you tell the police, yeah, I went to the party. Yeah, I had something to drink. Yeah, we were out on the dance floor. Yeah, I was standing right next to him. Yeah, you could be completely innocent.
Yes, I went home. I went to their house.
Right.
Oh, but by the way, I didn't do what they're saying I did when I got there. You confirmed
98% of what they're accusing you of.
Right.
And by the way, the person that called them, right, wasn't you. They got called by the other person. And the sheer fact of the matter is that most of the time, unless there's some just obvious issue, like the person's on drugs, that they have a history with law enforcement, just their story just doesn't make any sense at all. Most of the time, I find that the police believe people that call them and report crimes, over the phone or in person, that they believe the first person that calls them, and they're operating, with that in mind. And so whenever they question you, it's not like, well, man, I'll just come across super credible. It's like, no,
you're confirmation bias. They
right.
already believe what's being alleged, and they're just looking for facts to support that. You're not going to go down there and talk yourself out. And this was the question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to this, so you may be able to point one out. But I don't remember a scenario where someone's gone down there without an attorney, talked to the police, and they have made that situation better.
No, and I'll say this, even in a situation where that was even possibly could have happened, the police, all right, when they don't believe the person that's come down there and talked to them, right, they're not going to treat you, all right, the same way, right? Like whenever they say, oh, your name came up in investigation, I can't tell you what it's about or anything like that. They're not treating you like someone that they're, no, you're a suspect. And there was a famous judge that said any lawyer worth his salt will never allow a person who is considered a suspect to speak to the police. This isn't nuanced advice. This is absolutely the most important fundamental advice you can be given.
It's honestly, advice that you should know so well that you literally talk to your kids when they get old enough to where they might have run-ins. Where, look, hey, if you're pulled over, if you're having any interactions with the police, you shut your mouth, you tell them you want a lawyer, and then you tell them who your dad is and you call me.
Yeah, right.
Like, that has to be how that goes.
The issue is that, there's a difference between being a witness and being a suspect.
Sure.
When you're a witness, they give you information.
Sure.
They're telling you, they will tell you over the phone, you're not a suspect, you're not going to be read your Miranda warnings. Even still, you have the right to always, fundamentally under the Constitution, to deal with the police through counsel. That is a right you have. So if it's a right you can afford or can't afford, because the law also says if you're a suspect, they have to provide a lawyer for you, you should exercise it because it never benefits you to deal. It's funny. And we have, people that, work here at the different casinos and things like that, who have moved here and are immigrants, right? And they'll get like a traffic ticket and they'll come in and they'll give it to me like, I need to hire you for this traffic ticket. I'm like, look, this is a minor traffic infraction. You're going to show up at this date. If they don't reduce it, if they don't reduce it to some non-moving violation, or I'll just go ahead and make the call and, trying to get taken care of for them. But they see it as a foreign system. It's like, I'm not in my country. I'm here temporarily. This is a foreign system. And in the United States, especially, I feel like sometimes in the South, we look at the criminal justice system because we know so many police officers and because, we have sort of a great sort of just culture of just sort of, picking up the phone.
Hospitality, Southern hospitality.
Southern hospitality. They'll be like, oh, no, I can handle that myself. They kind of look at it like it's building an old, refabbing an old home. It's like, I can do that sheetrock work by myself, but when we get to the court part, that's like the electrical. I'd have to call so-and-so, the electrician. No, man, it's a foreign system. Treat it like it's a foreign system because that protects you better. And even if you go down there and let's say you come across really just good and credible. Have you ever seen the shows where someone has the camera behind them from up top in the interview room, right? Does anyone ever look innocent in those videos? Like, no, those videos are all bad. I don't want them ever to have a video of my client in that room being asked aggressive questions by a police officer who, with those questions, is in fact suggesting that my client's done something wrong. If he deals with me through counsel, you're never on one of those videos, right? I can call the police officer, and if we want to cooperate and provide information that we think might benefit them in their investigation and prove our innocence, right, or prove they can't, prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, we can do that. But there's smarter ways to go about doing that, and they need to be exercised.
Doing it on their home turf.
That's right.
I mean, that's exactly. If you've ever watched a documentary on any crime series or anything like that, when they play those videos, they play them because like they look horrible. The person looks guilty. You start making judgment calls immediately about, they did it.
But if they're planning to arrest you anyway, they usually do it at the end of that interview, right? Especially when they have an arrest warrant before the interview ever started. So if you want some advance notice of when you're going to be arrested, then oftentimes that's information that we can get on the front end and then better help you to protect. So you're just not being put in cuffs at the end of an interview you thought might result in you talking yourself out of the arrest that was already going to happen.
So the two things that just we want to hammer home: the rights that you should never waive. Okay, your right to an attorney, and your right against self-incrimination, and that means I don't have to speak. I can stay quiet.
Yeah, you can't even say. This is a funny point that you can't even say. Potentially, right to remain silent. And there's the right to a lawyer, right, and right against self-incrimination. You have to be clear and unambiguous. What that means is you can't even say like, man, I want a lawyer dog. Because you might be referring to a dog that practices law. And literally, dogs don't practice law. You weren't asking for a lawyer.
Literally a Supreme Court decision.
It was a writ comment, I think. I don't think it was actually part of the initial. But I will say this. Clear and unambiguous is I want a lawyer. I'm not answering any questions
Until I have my lawyer with me.
without a lawyer, and then end it. Actually be quiet. And the law says that as soon as you do that, then you can't say, I think I still, do I need a lawyer? That's not clear and unambiguous. You asking the police officers if you need one is not clear and unambiguous. So you have to be clear, you have to be unambiguous. And the law says as soon as you do that, then the interview must immediately cease. And that is where we want it to end.
And that's
Actually, we want it never to have started in the first place.
and that's critical, because if you are clear and unambiguous and you assert your right to an attorney, and that officer says, oh, well, if you get an attorney, then we have to make a arresting decision. You sure you want to do that? And he walks you up. At that point, anything he gets from you after that,
That's right.
he now can't use.
Well, he shouldn't get anything from you after that, but he
Shouldn't.
still shouldn't be able to use it.
But that's what happens in these things. Even in these cases where we see clear and ambiguous, I want an attorney, sometimes they keep talking, or they wait a little while and they go back and they don't shut it down. So there's a lot to this, but you're not going to help yourself in that situation. You need to immediately, you have been contacted by the police. Adam said it well. This is a complete foreign system to you. This is not the world that you swim in. So immediately say, I've talked to people about this. Hey, I just got a call. This guy left a message on I'm saying, what do I do? Okay, well, if he calls back, just let him know, hey, it's not a good time for me. I'll call you back in just a little bit. And you call your attorney. That's what happens if this happens. You can get off the phone and you can get the attorney. And then guess what? You don't call him back. He does.
That's right.
He calls him back and says, hey, I got a call from so-and-so, said you were interested in talking to them. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
And if they tell him, oh, well, he's not a suspect at all. Okay, well, let's talk about, what you're looking into, and let me make sure that he's not going to become a suspect.
Yeah, if you cooperate, we'll cooperate.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And so he's going to get a ton of information about that way before you won't get any information out of it until midway through an interview where they've already decided, all right, now let's get to the more poignant questions.
You've seen these videos where, am I being detained? Am I being detained? That's an important question, because if you are being detained, you're entitled to certain rights. And so figuring out once you've been detained is an important process, because a lot of times detainment is just another word for, I just haven't put the cuffs on you, but you're in custody.
It's coming.
That's right.
So like I said, if you're having an interaction with the police, you do not waive your right to counsel. You do not waive your right against self-incrimination. In fact, even if you're not warned of it, invoke it yourself. You're being contacted by the police. I want to have an attorney. I'm exercising my right to an attorney. I don't want to answer any more questions. It'll shut it down. Could it lead to an arrest? Maybe. But if it does,
you were getting arrested
already getting arrested, and nothing you did changed that. Absolutely. And all you've done is protect yourself from hurting yourself by going and saying something you shouldn't.
And I'll say this to that question. That's the fear. I mean, even in the conversation, you kind of feel like, do I want to tell, could it lead to an arrest? I can't prevent a police officer coming in here and arresting me for something I didn't do right now as we're filming this video. Right. What I can control are the decisions I make, and make sure they're the smart ones. And what we're telling you is when people waive their rights as suspects and go and talk to the police, it does not help their case, period, once they're a suspect. And, lastly, I think most important thing to realize is that we're playing the long game. If you're a suspect, you're being investigated, you assert your rights, and they arrest you as a result, okay? Even if that were a potential consequence and had, gone down there and talked to them, somehow that wouldn't have been the case. That's never the case. But I'm trying to avoid people being convicted for crimes, right? I know an arrest has consequences, but we're ultimately trying to make sure people aren't convicted. And so we do have the long game in mind.
Right. And protecting you, protecting your family, protecting everything that you've worked for is critical if you're going through this situation and you want an attorney that understands that. So invoke these rights, exercise these rights, never waive these rights, and contact an attorney immediately if you find yourself in one of these situations. Resist that anxiety to just
that inherently coercive environment.
Right.
The Supreme Court called it.
Supreme Court knew about it. Everybody knows about it. You need to be aware of it too, so that you do not become a victim to that. So that's all we got for today. Once again, Jonathan Johnson, Adam Johnson, right here in Lake Charles at the Johnson Firm. Hey, we appreciate you watching that video. If you have other questions about other legal topics, check out our website, johnsonfirmla.com, or our YouTube page. We put out material all of the time in the areas of family law, personal injury, and criminal defense. We really appreciate you checking us out. Thanks so much.